Welcome back to another version of Jazz Evensong from Brentwood Presbyterian Church Online. We're doing this during the pandemic shutdown. At this stage, it looks as if we certainly won't rush back to doing Jazz Evensong on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock at Brentwood in person, face to face. The general sense around the congregation is that we want to do it ASAP, with the P standing for prudent. And so we'll keep you posted. And until then, we're doing a shorter version, kind of a 25-30 minute version of Jazz Evensong with some clips that Ken Burke has done from previous Jazz Evensongs and concerts, and then some recordings that our own jazz musicians, Ben McCrae and Dan Reynolds, have done of some of their own compositions, a lot of their own compositions, and that's what we're going to feature on this version of Jazz Evensong Online. 3 songs that two of which Dan has written, one of which Ben has written. We'll begin with Ben's composition of Meeting House. I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. Dan then composed a piece called Gospel, and then he's also composed a piece based on Psalm 55. So that's where we'll be going this evening. We do want to acknowledge that the church facilities sit on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, First Nations, and that we sit there with respect and with gratitude, and that part of our sense of our own missioning is that we want to do everything we possibly can to develop closer ties of kinship with our First Nations people, as well as with all other peoples. And certainly in this time of heightened protest and recognition that something needs to be done with systemic racism in North America, but in many ways around the world. All sorts of suggestions for taking steps around that way, but we at Brentwood certainly feel that the way in which the gospel nourishes us to flourish in the grace of Jesus Christ in every dimension of our lives, in every relationship in which we find ourselves, is an important piece of that. Again, a word of thanks to Ken Burke and Burkeville Productions, who are helping us put together these shortened versions of Jazz Evensong to post on our Facebook page, Jazz Evensong at Brentwood, and they'll be done there usually around Wednesday, Thursday of each week until we get back together. We're going to begin this session, this service, with Ben McCrae's piece called The Meeting House. And so this is a song that Ben wrote as a tribute to the home that he found, the sense of welcome and belonging that he found at Brentwood, at this little church in Burnaby, British Columbia. But I think what it does is capture beautifully the essence of what, in many ways, God intends the church to be, which is a place of being welcomed home. Sometime in the next few weeks, we'll feature some compositions from Fred Rogers' Neighborhood. They were arranged by Jill Townsend for our big band, the Brentwood Jazz All-Stars, and Dan and Ben directs the big band. That was one of the things that he found that he was able to do at this new home at Brentwood, was realize his dream of establishing a big band, and it's now up and running and doing wonderful work and stuff. They've been shut down during the pandemic, but they're anxious to get back up and running. And one of the things that we'll be doing is a suite of 8 songs from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And so what Ben and Dan are going to do in a future service is take 3 of those pieces and work them up for their duo. But it is this sense of welcoming. You are accepted as you are. You're not left there. We'll talk about that in relationship to the second piece, Dan's composition on gospel. But you are accepted as you are. And you are invited to participate in the family life at Brentwood, in the home life at Brentwood. And so this is a place of meeting God, a place of meeting each other, and a place of meeting yourself at a deeper level, with an identity that has been given to you as a gift, entrusted to you by God to use to bless creation. So here's Ben's composition, played by Ben and Dan, called Meeting House. I love the way that piece captures the warmth and the welcome of Brentwood, and it's been such a privilege to work with them as their minister over the past 10 years, and it just feels like it's like, in some ways, it feels like it's just getting going. But we'll see what happens, what the Spirit has in store for us. This next piece is a piece that I think, as I remember my conversation with Dan, he wrote the first version of this. I mean, jazz musicians are constantly refining and revising the pieces that they've composed, and that's part of what I love about it. I mean, if I look back on some of my preaching on the same text over years and years and years, you see new things and new ideas emerge out of it. I began to preach on the Emmaus Road story, I think, when I was 14 years old at the Easter sunrise service at Drummond Hill Presbyterian Church in Niagara Falls, where I grew up. And I've been preaching on it most Easters ever since. And it still generates new insights and new ideas, and you see new levels. So anyhow, so Dan wrote this piece when he was studying jazz in the jazz program at McGill University in Montreal, and has continued to rework it. And there's a feel to it that I think captures what, at least for Canadian Presbyterians, is really the heart of the gospel. So we talked about Ben's the meeting house giving you that sense of welcome, that sense of welcome as you are. But this is a piece that begins to take you from where you are to where you could be, to where you might be, to where God is inviting you to go, to come. And for Canadian Presbyterians, the heart of the gospel message is that in Jesus Christ, God has forgiven and reconciled you to the original dignity that God intended for you. So whatever messes you've been through, whatever traumas you've gotten tangled up in this home, welcomed into this home, there is forgiveness and there is reconciliation, and there is a new opportunity to become an ambassador for that love in every situation in which you find yourself. And by being an ambassador for that message of forgiveness and reconciliation, by being an advocate for the love of God as we see it most clearly in Jesus Christ, you become a blessing in the world, in every circle of inspiration and influence in which you live. And so listen for that invitation, following the welcome. Listen for that invitation in Dan's piece, Gospel. It's been interesting with the number of jazz musicians beginning to hang around Brentwood in a whole variety of ways. And I mean, one of the things that we've done quite intentionally is to extend a welcome to the jazz community in Greater Vancouver, and in many ways, we've welcomed jazz musicians from across Canada. But it's a welcome into the space. What we discovered, and we still don't know whether this was the original intention of the architect or not, but the acoustics in that space are quite remarkable. I mean, the musicians who began to play there 10 years ago kept remarking on it. And so one of the ways in which the congregation has seen its growth and its evolution is to provide space for that community, the jazz community in particular, but other musicians and other artists, to come and use the space to express themselves, to convey the messages that they sense are being composed in them and through them. And in the process, we have some interesting dialogue and interesting conversations about where those messages are coming from. They understand them in a delightfully wide range of ways. But in those conversations, we're able to say, well, this is how we see it from the Christian perspective. And who knows what the Spirit will do with those dialogues. But one of the things that's interesting is especially Dan's immediate circle of colleagues and friends, many of whom who studied with him in the McGill Jazz program, have begun to do compositions based on the Psalms, the songbook of the Bible, based on that wonderful collection of poetry that comes from, I mean, the best estimates I've seen among the scholars is that it was probably written and compiled over a period of 400 years. I mean, stop and think about the range of experience that gave rise to that poetry, to those prayers, to the creator of the universe in that period in Israel's history. And it's a remarkably rich treasury of faith and of struggling with what it means to be loyal to that God, struggling with what it means to be in covenant with a God who has stated clearly and continues to demonstrate that God's loyalty to us in our calling as blessings to God's whole creation has remained steadfast, has just remained rock solid, is everlasting. And that God never gives up on us. So this composition that Dan has done around Psalm 55. Now, in the New Revised Standard Version, which we use at Brentwood, the title given to the psalm is Complaint About a Friend's Treachery. And so it's this, if you go and read it, I won't bother reading, we won't take the time to read it, but it's Psalm 55. In whatever translation you happen to have available. But it's this hymn of trust in God in the face of the kind of resistance, the kind of betrayal, the kind of disloyalty that you may encounter as you take the gospel out into the world. And in those encounters in the world, how the Spirit is forming you with resilience to be a blessing no matter how people treat you. And so the composition focuses on that resilience that we get in our relationship with God in facing any situation in which we find ourselves and being blessings in the midst of that situation. So here's Dan and Ben playing Dan's composition based on Psalm 55. Thank you again for being with us for this version of Jazz Evensong Online. Again, thanks to Dan and Ben, to Ken Burke for helping us put all of this stuff together and mount it on our Facebook page, and to you for viewing and for your encouraging comments and continuing prayers as we allow the Spirit, allow the Trinity trio to nourish us to flourish in the grace of Jesus Christ in and through Brentwood. We still gather together live, although not in person, on Sunday mornings. We get together at 10 o'clock on Zoom. The link for the Sunday morning service, that's 10 o'clock Pacific. So the link for the Sunday morning service is always at the top of our webpage, brentwoodpc.ca. And so if you go there and click on that link sometime around quarter to 10, 10 o'clock, between quarter to 10 and 10 o'clock, you'll be able to join us online on Zoom. And it's a different way of worshiping, but I think the Brentwood folk have adapted to it well. We've been delighted to welcome new folks from not only from Vancouver, but from literally across the country at that time. So you are most welcome to join us. 10 o'clock Sunday mornings, on the link, click the link at the top of the Brentwood website, brentwoodpc.ca. Let's spend a couple of moments in prayer. Let us pray. Your welcome amazes us, oh God. Welcomed as we are. I mean, whatever troubles and fears, whatever wanderings and failings we may have been through, we may be in the midst of, yet as we sit down in front of our screens to view this, as we join with each other on a Sunday morning, as eventually we gather together again in the sanctuary, you just welcome us. You extend your forgiving and reconciling love to us in ways that are amazing to us. And so we wonder at the gospel that you offer, that gospel of acceptance, that gospel of belonging, that gospel of drawing us back home. And somewhere deep within, we sense that homeness, if we can use that word. We sense our kinship with you and with each other and with all of those with whom we have encounters during our week. You have drawn our attention in dramatic and disturbing, challenging, hopefully provocative ways to the systems, the attitudes, the behaviors that we are habituated in living together, and the ways in which those do not reflect your justice and your kindness and your humility. And so whatever our circles of inspiration and influence may be in this world, however small, however large they may be, use the inspiration of this music and this time together to open us up to new possibilities, open us up to pivoting, to turning in ways that enable you to use us as blessings in your world. And assure us of your presence and of your support and of your guidance. Assure us that your face shines upon us. Your grace enlightens us and shines through us. It is your grace that we receive, that we enjoy, and that we share. We give thanks. Amen.